You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by the founder of Better Beings, Michelle Zellner. Michelle's experiences have equipped her with knowledge and perspective, and for nearly 3 decades, she has been informing, influencing, and inspiring thousands on their journeys. This show spotlights guests of diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise, but they all align with Michelle's purpose and passion to help you be a better human being. There is something for everyone on their way to a healthier, happier life. Enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. This is episode 135, being released on April 14th. And I am so grateful to have a repeat guest on the show who is also joined by his wife today. So a repeat and a newbie. You might recognize this person if you have been listening, or even if you just know anything about me. This is one of the founding band members of the Nadas, my favorite band in the whole wide world. If you haven't listened to episode 40 from season 1, where I interviewed Jason and his bandmate Mike, you should go do that because it's a super fun conversation. But today I have Jason and Emma Walsmith, who are on to talk about what I think is a really important topic. And April is Alcohol Awareness Month. We're going to talk about alcohol. In fact, mostly we're going to talk about not drinking alcohol. So Jason and Emma, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, it's my pleasure. So, I know most people who listen to me know, but I have been following you, the Nadas, for close to 30 years. I think we established that a while ago. And in the last few years, especially since y'all came on my show a couple years ago, I think we've gotten to know each other on a little better level. And I have to say, I noticed a few years ago at one of the shows, you were not drinking. And I thought, Jason must be on a health kick, because over the 30 years, I noticed that sometimes you guys were kind of being healthy, looked like you're working out a little more, and sometimes you weren't. And sometimes there was a lot of drinking going on, and sometimes there wasn't. Something is just, the health and wellness girl I'm kind of always observing, not judging, just observing. Trust me, there were times where I was doing a little more drinking than others as well. Right. But when I noticed that, I thought, okay. And then I kept noticing it. And then I was talking to you and you had a beverage and I was like, oh, it's non-alcoholic. And then you had told me that, you gave up drinking. And that was several years ago when we chatted about that. And then I think in a recent conversation, you had mentioned that you are 5 years sober.
Right.
So I want to explore all the things. Life on the road, obviously, being in the industry that you're in, really, very easy to fall into the drinking and all the things that go on with that kind of lifestyle.
All the time.
Yep. And then probably really hard to get out of it too. So let's talk a little bit just about that. And then we'll bring Emma into the conversation, because I know Emma is also on this journey with you and obviously supporting each other through all of it. So let me give you the mic and tell the story.
Sure. Well, I would just say, your observation of shows, however far back you go, that part of our show, there was always alcohol, but there were shots, trays full of shots, sometimes 2 to 3 per person at a time coming up to the stage. And so it was just a regular part of the show. And it was fun. It was a fun part of the show. It was a way to kind of break the wall with the audience and just became part of it. So, but I got to the point where I just felt like I had my lifetime's worth of alcohol, basically. It just got to the point where it was tiresome and boring. About, I would say, 6 months before Em and I did this together, which is probably, I think that's an interesting and unique part of the story that we'll get to. But about 6 months before that, we were out to dinner with some of our drinking friends, our drinking and dining friends, and we were having our pre-dinner cocktails, and we drank one and we ordered another round. And I said to the table that I had heard a term that I hadn't heard before. And I said, I think I might be sober curious. And we all kind of laughed about that. And then we ordered another round. And I had heard that term from a friend that I admired and was inspired by, and he used that term. And so that just kind of planted the seed in my mind. And then it stuck with me. So that's what kind of motivated me to think about that and just sort of visualize my life without it, what it would be, And so that's where it started.
Nice. And Emma, chime in here. Tell us just a little bit about you and maybe even your own relationship with alcohol and how, you and Jason together are now making this decision to just nix it out of your life.
Sure. So when he said he might be sober curious, I actually was the person who was like, let's order another round. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's get more drinks over here, please, as soon as possible. Mostly to be hilarious, just to be for fun. But then I think maybe that kind of stuck with me, wondering like, well, what does that even mean? Well, my relationship with alcohol was that, yes, I traveled with the band and was at all those shows, and that we would go to these shows and we would have, maybe at the time I was traveling for about 5 years with the Nadas, we would have oftentimes a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then maybe even a Sunday afternoon show. And the interesting part about that is that for us, it's another run of shows, and we're going to do it again next week and the following week and as often as possible. But our audience and our fan base, it was maybe their one show that they go to every year. And so they were diving deep into that nostalgia, taking them back to their college days if they've been following the Nadas since college. Or maybe it's that night where mom and dad get to cut loose, like they finally don't have the kids. And so part of us being good stewards of their time and supporting their celebration was that they would include us by bringing us shots. And even me as the merch person and tour manager, they would be coming over, buying me another beer. We're not spending any money on it. It's all paid for by the fans. And, part of you is like, yes, I do this because I get it. It makes sense. And the song's about Templeton Rye whiskey, so let's drink more whiskey. And then the other part of you is like, do I do this every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon? And is that not great? Well, then I have the history of my grandfather having been an alcoholic. And so I watched his journey growing up of when he was sober and when he was not sober. And it just got me thinking, I think when Jason said sober curious, I thought, well, would that even work? Like, can you be sober in the music industry or entertainment industry? Will people be offended? Will it feel like you're trying to be like better than someone else or something? And so I thought it was kind of impossible initially, mostly because I think I was trying to be empathetic and compassionate to what our fans experience and that like energy that we all bring to it. But then we just kind of decided that we could try it. And if it was awful, we could drink again. Like, that could be an option. So at least let's try it and see if it's doable. And if it's doable, maybe we'll discover something that we didn't know was totally an option. And I can say that we're 5.5 years without alcohol. And I would say that it's the best decision. It's the decision that just continues to get better and better and better with time. And when I first heard this term sober curious, I certainly would not have had that inkling of information or perspective.
I love
and
that.
all of those reasons, those anxieties, those thoughts, like she mentioned, I had similar ones that I want to reiterate. Like, I thought, will I be entertaining, or will it be fun for me, or will this be a buzzkill for the audience, and none of them really they were not legitimate. It was just like a worry that was unnecessary.
It was a non-issue. If anything, our drinking buddies who still drink alcohol, they started drinking. They would do, in between every beer, they would drink a NA beer when they're out with us. So they weren't drinking as fast as they normally would have. And fans weren't offended by us not doing shots. And
I don't think so. Were you offended, Michelle?
Oh yeah. I haven't asked anyone.
As a girl who doesn't drink, as probably one of the few sober people at a Nada show, no, I actually appreciate it. But I am curious, you go from sober curious to, okay, we're not going to drink. Did you announce it, or did you just we're just going to be silent and just not drink and see if anyone notices? What did your bandmates think about this? Because you're not just performing, you're traveling with each other, right? You're on the road. You're living together for all of these shows that you're on the road for. So tell me a little bit.
I want to answer that question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was thinking fast. I think I want to answer that question by even backing up a little further, because I think this is a really interesting part of our story, which is that we came to this conclusion separately and without discussion. And then we announced it to each other,
which I was terrified to do.
Like, it was such a weird thing, but I had said I was sober curious 6 months before. She was on a long trip visiting family. I was on a long motorcycle trip with a friend. And on my trip, we were connected via helmets and we were talking the whole time, 3,500 miles. He's sober. And so we talked a lot about it.
And you were on motorcycles and covering a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of opportunity to be drinking anyway.
I spent this whole week not drinking in times when I normally would have, like adventuring through new towns, exploring new restaurants and bars, sitting around a campfire. And I spent this whole week talking about it and then not missing it. And when I got home, I played a show and I drank. And then I woke up the next morning and I felt like crap. And I thought, why did I do that? I didn't need to do that. And so then we had a phone call and she said, I have something important to tell you. And I said, oh, good. I have something important to tell you too. And we just both announced to each other that we weren't drinking anymore. And so that was amazing. Then to answer your question further, I did say to my band that, yeah, I'm not going to drink anymore. And I think they all thought that was funny.
Right. Because what we've noticed almost right away with our band was that they seemed to be drinking a lot less too when we stopped drinking. And then it dawned on us that we were actually the ones that were like starting the drinking. Like they would all get a beer at the bar because we went and opened the bar, and so without us saying, hey, we've arrived at the venue, let's grab a drink and hang out at the bar, they were like, oh, let's finish sound check and we all head on to our next thing. And it doesn't have to be this. And in fairness to, I don't know, it was just a cadence that we had all gotten used to. So then you remove us from that and they just found a different cadence, which was not immediately from bar to bar to bar to experience those
We found
moments.
something else to do with our hands.
Yeah.
It's almost like we always needed something to do with our hands, so.
And so when you both come to the conclusion that you're not drinking anymore, was it really with the intent of never, ever, ever having a drink again? Or was it, I'm going to give it a break. I'm going to try not to drink. I'm going to not drink as much. What was the actual mentality for maybe each of you going into that?
Mine was pretty solid. I'm going to take a year off.
Okay.
Without even any pressure on myself that I was going to not like even contemplate more than that. I just thought I was going to take a year off just to see what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't long into it that I was like, oh, I don't think I need this ever again.
Right. Mine was more of a I'm done drinking approach. Again, with the mindset of like, and if this decision turns out to be bad, like with all other decisions in life, like I still have the ability to make a different decision. But I just felt like for the last probably 6 months to a year of having alcohol in my life, that I had started to notice that I was in a relationship with diminishing returns on drinking alcohol, that it wasn't providing me the same sort of like, woohoo, this is so much fun that it did when I was in my early 20s. It was a headache. It was tiredness. It was dehydration. It was unnecessary disagreements and even arguments. It was all these things that just weren't starting to, it's like I had a pros and cons column in my mind, a chart like that. And the one side of the chart just kept getting longer and longer and longer, while the other side of the chart was like, craft beer is fun. Well, guess what? There's some really good NA craft beers, that kind of thing. Or, oh, we love the ritual of having a cocktail at night or at the bar when we're waiting for our table. Well, great. There are other really good options that you can pursue that don't have alcohol in them, that even still have that craft thoughtfulness approach from the bartender. So for me, it was I'm done drinking. okay, let's see how this works. And I just wanted to make that decision while I felt like I had the autonomy to make that decision, knowing that my grandpa had really struggled to make that decision numerous times throughout his life. And I felt like, no, I can do this, or I can at least try this. But I've never been a fan of the like, maybe I should just drink less approach. If it works for people, that's awesome. You know, we're all different. But for me, it became like a mental argument with myself to say, well, I should drink less. Well, why should I drink less? Well, they're drinking more. You know, like it just became this ambiguous thing. So I wanted to have a hard and fast rule to try on, and it stuck.
And was there any point, so Jason, you went a week without and then you had some, and you're like, okay, no. But even any point for the two of you, maybe it's your anniversary or you're on a vacation or you're at a nice dinner, you're like, you know what, why not? Let's get a cocktail. Let's get a beer. Never came into your mind.
No, at first we replaced it with we bought every mocktail mixer and every NA spirit there was, and we really replaced it with that. But
I would take a cooler of sparkling waters and Diet Coke and everything to like every social event that I was going to make sure that I was properly armed for the occasion.
Yeah, but we really don't even do that much anymore. No. You know, we definitely replaced it with dessert for a while.
But very common.
Yeah, I think I mean, we've since learned that it's almost like that's the sugar addiction, you know, that you have. So I wouldn't say we've totally shaken that.
I'm not trying to. I don't drink alcohol.
I still
I can have
I now drink coffee all day, every day. Mm-hmm. But I did that before, didn't I?
I have a 40-ounce water bottle. No, it never, I would say for the first 15 days of my life without alcohol, I felt uncomfortable because I was experiencing world without alcohol as an adult for my first time. You know, as an adult, I'd been drinking since, college time. So it was an uncomfortable thing to be completely present and completely, there are some moments that I quickly realized that when I felt certain stress feelings or when I was in certain circumstances that were overwhelming, I realized that, my normal response to this is to get another White Claw out of the fridge or pour myself a glass of wine or whatever that is. And that's a very on television, that's what you do. This isn't an abnormal thought process. This is like a very American human approach to consuming alcohol. And so instead I had to sit in those moments and do something else with my hands. So I learned how to knit. And that was kind of what kept me busy, was this knitting thing. And that was on day 15 of sobriety. I was 2 weeks in, feeling uncomfortable. Everything feels really real for the first time, because again, for better or worse, Jason and I are in an industry where we're not talking we always drink too much with dinner. We're talking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes Mondays. We are in breweries, vineyards, music venues where part of the purpose that everyone else has to be there, not everyone else, but majority is that we're going to drink alcohol. We're going to eat dinner. We're going to drink alcohol. We're going to play a show and we're going to drink alcohol.
We didn't even have the obstacle of, what is our budget? Because it was just free flowing all the time. Backstage was a bottle of every spirit and whatever we picked out on our rider that we said we needed.
And then whatever the fans bring us across 3.5 hours throughout the evening.
Right.
So we just had a very dramatic switch from partying like we were still in college for a decade of our lives or longer for you, to, now I don't drink alcohol. Now what do I do with this space and time and moment? And that was a really surreal thing, but it never once did I think maybe we should drink again. And now you couldn't pay me enough.
Yeah. Jason, what about you? Did you have any of that discomfort as well when you decided no more? What was that evolution like?
No. The only thing I can say is that occasionally I miss the warm feeling of like a first sip of whiskey when it's cold outside, or when I'm sick and I'm like, I remember that making me feel a little bit better when I had a cold or something. That's the only thing I can say that I have like a hunger pang for, but that's really it. I haven't figured out I haven't really faced this yet, but I was an anthropology major. I've traveled a lot around the world, and I know that alcohol is the ultimate icebreaker for like between cultures. And I haven't had to come face to face with that yet. And I don't know exactly how to deal with that because of the way different cultures approach it. But that's like the only anxiety I have. And I just haven't really been back to face that yet. There's also plenty of places to go where it's not a big part of it. So I may just not go to Russia.
Let's talk about the positive impacts getting alcohol out of your life have brought to you. How is life different through sober eyes?
Clarity, more peace,
very few arguments,
struggle with decisions, less guilt with making poor decisions late at night. Like, am I going to drink more or am I not?
Am I going to eat this whole pizza?
There's just a lot less confusion and less thoughts to deal with. Just a much simpler, purposeful life, I feel like.
And I just really, really, really love how present I am for everything I experience now. You know, there are times where, like, there are moments in my life that were really special that I remember, or I vaguely remember, just because of the nature of the fact that we were out drinking. And, you know, thank goodness for photos and stuff, but it just doesn't, it's never the same as actually truly being fully present to experience something. And because of the society we grow up in, and because of the way that once you get to college, you're inundated in the alcohol world. And then if you just don't, you know, break free of it, then everyone's always going to be handing you another drink, another beer, another shot, whatever it is. And I think that the biggest gift that sobriety from alcohol gives you is the ability to remain completely aware and control and present of what you're experiencing, for better or worse. It makes the highs so much higher to actually hold on to these moments. And it also makes it uncomfortable to sit in your real feelings without having the opportunity to like dull it a little bit, but it's worth it. I think we're happier, healthier, less tired. Better off.
That reminds me of like a big motivator and life change for me, which was that there were a lot of shows that I didn't remember the end of them. And I think I held it together because there's video records of those, and there's recordings of those.
It's not like you ever made a total fool of yourself or anything.
Yeah. So that was a skill that I guess one of those things you're real proud of, but I shouldn't really be. But yeah, there are a lot of shows I don't remember the end of. And I have really bad FOMO, where I don't want to miss anything. I want to be everywhere all the time, all at once. And there's a lot of things that I was there and I don't remember. And so it's almost like the worst case of FOMO, you know, like I missed out and I was there. So
right. Yeah.
I don't have that anymore. That's a really huge benefit for me.
I love that. What about any pushback? Like, did anybody ever pressure you? Like, oh, come on, just have a shot with me. Or, oh, come on, this one night won't matter. Did you get any kind of pushback from anywhere in the circle, friends, family, fans, anybody who really just didn't really respect that boundary and wanted you to just come back over?
If I did, only from fans or friends who I didn't make clear that I no longer drank. So like, because I didn't make an announcement to our fan base or at the beginning of every show, I just like politely refused. Then people were a little more like, oh, come on. But as soon as I said, no, I don't drink anymore, then there wasn't any, a lot of those trays full of shots would still come to stage, but I would just take mine and hand it to someone in the front row. And I would say, I need a pinch shooter. And then it was kind of amazing to me how quickly that made its way through the fan base. Like rarely anymore do I refuse a shot from someone. They don't get offered to me anymore. Now trays of shots come up with, instead of 4 or 5 shots, they'll have 2 or 3 shots because it's almost like people are aware. So
2 or 3 shots and an NA beer.
Yeah, a lot of times. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Emma? Did you get any from friend circles or any kind of resistance?
No, I got a little bit of feedback of, are you sure you want to totally stop drinking? Maybe you just want to like drink less than you normally drink? Have you tried just like keeping track of how much you're drinking and all these kind of like trying to apply science or something to a decision that I had made with my heart. And so no one was forcing the issue, but just a little bit of, because what I found is that when you say, I don't drink alcohol, the person you're speaking with is wondering, is it okay that they drink alcohol in your presence? And so now I know to just say, oh, I'm good. I don't drink alcohol. And then if I feel the vibe is off, I say, I don't have any issues with other people drinking alcohol. Fritz doesn't like alcohol. I'll go get him.
He's going to have to be on this episode.
That's okay. We invite the furry friends.
I felt myself feeling like I needed to like justify sometimes why. Like I wanted to tell people, I wrestled with this in my mind. I wanted to say, well, don't worry. I didn't crash a car or punch anyone. I just decided,
Right.
But that was like all in my head. And then I just sort of let that go. And then it was fine.
Yeah. Initially I found myself saying things like, nothing bad happened, like it's just that I realized that I've been, there were times in the band where we were sponsored by Templeton Rye Whiskey and we had more whiskey readily available to us than water. And it's just like, what a privileged life to lead, but also I think we might have had our fill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think you highlight the point of how we've so normalized this thing that is actually super, super harmful, right? We normalize it. We celebrate it. I think we've definitely made a shift in the last few years. There are more people that I am meeting that don't drink, not because they're recovering alcoholics. They just decide it's just not adding value to my life. I mean, years ago, I just decided I can take it or leave it. So I'm going to leave it. Now, I may have a beverage here or there if I feel like it's going to, enhance the situation. I can count on one hand the number I have in a year. And usually I still have all 5 fingers left. But every now and then I'll have a drink. And it's great. When I have it, I love it. It's fine. But for the most part, I don't care about it. It doesn't do anything good for me. So why would I do it? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are starting to see that. And I think younger people are starting to see it at younger and younger ages as well. And I know that peer pressure or the feeling like I'm not going to be as fun, I'm not going to fit in, people aren't going to like me as much. I know that is a common narrative in people's heads where they fear, doing life without alcohol or being that person that's the only one not drinking and watching everybody else thinking, well, they're having fun. Maybe I want to do that too. So, if you are maybe talking to somebody, and I so appreciate your experience because of the industry that you're in, right? If you, and you're still in it, it's not like you left the band and you're not touring anymore. No, you're still doing it. So people who are in an environment like you are constantly around it where other people are doing it. And it's actually like an expected part of the day or the night.
Right.
I mean, if you can say no to it, maybe, just a couple of tips other than all the amazing things you already shared that for anyone who's thinking about it, but who hasn't taken the leap, what are some thoughts to maybe help steer them in that direction?
Yeah, I actually even still play my drinking songs, but I've reframed them in my own mind to mean something different to me. And they it totally fits with them. I didn't have to change anything. I mean, having a buddy was, in this case, it's my wife, but having a person to support it was, I'm sure I take for granted how much help that was. But anybody who's thinking about this, I bet if you say it out loud to your friends, there's probably someone else who's feeling that way too. And I just imagine that would be amazingly helpful. I feel like I want you to talk about your group.
Yeah. So I think that finding a community of people who don't drink alcohol is one of the most incredible ways that you could support yourself choosing to not drink. And so I actually, through Instagram, had noticed that a friend of mine had posted that she was 500 days, I think, sober. And I was like, that's so cool. I'm 13 days sober. So I messaged her, and she said that she had this little knitting club where it was just a bunch of people ages, mid 20s to early 60s, I think at the time. And they're creative types, all ladies. And they got together every Sunday morning to drink coffee and hang out at a local coffee shop and knit if you wanted to, and mostly just be a safe space to talk about your relationship with alcohol. And so, AA is for people who are alcoholics. Will you take Fritz?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And it's not a bad program by any means, but it's my understanding that it includes a lot of guilt discussion. And my community of joining this little knitting club, it was an opportunity to just have a space where we weren't talking about guilt. We weren't talking about bad. We weren't talking about needing to offer apologies or anything like that. We were just being a reflection for one another of the fact that a life without alcohol is, one, possible, and two, really great and fun. And, that has been huge. So a friend of mine who recently stopped drinking, he was kind of nervous because all of his buddies were still drinking. And I found a men's group at not a religious place, just a kind of a community space. And I said, well, why don't you go there and just see what those guys like to talk about? Because so much of our culture and our hangout is focused on drinking and going to a show or going to the bar to watch sports and stuff like that. That's not a very easy space to make the switch in. But if you find spaces that aren't alcohol focused and gather friends and experiences out of that space, then you're more comfortable moving into those moments that are more prescribed for drinking, where you're like, no, I understand that this is a place where people will drink, but that life absolutely happens outside of this space. So that was huge for me. And that's also how I learned how to knit. And so when I found myself needing something to do with my hands, I was able to start knitting scarves. And I think I stopped drinking in June. And by Christmas time, I had knitted 48 scarves.
That's incredible. Well, and I would imagine you realize how much time you get back in your life to do other things, right? And that you can dive into some of these more creative opportunities or just meet new people, do new things, and expand that circle. I think, because this move towards maybe less alcohol, sober curious, people are talking about it way more than they ever used to. And yet there are going to be some people who will never get it, will never want to go down that road, think that, this is their identity. You're not the cool kid. I'm cool. I do think it is about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, or at least people who support you. You do whatever you want to do, but at the same time, you can support me in what I want to do. And I know for some people, maybe their spouse is not supportive, right? Maybe, Jason, you would have said, I don't want to drink anymore. And Emma would have been like, well, I do. So
yeah, I can't imagine.
How would that have worked, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was scared to tell him because I was worried that I had made this decision for myself and that it wasn't going to align with his rock and roll lifestyle. So when he said, oh, that's fine, me too.
It was a very quick conversation that we both built up in our minds.
It was awful.
Over the phone, where
it was
she
great,
said,
but it was awful
I have
leading
something
up to
important
it.
to talk about. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, me too.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that simple. So.
And that is a best case scenario. And yet I know that not everybody's going to have the best case scenario.
Right.
So
That's right.
And I just think so Jason and I do a lot for each other and make, decisions together and make certain concessions and things like that. And I just think that if it might take some normalization, but choosing to not drink, it would be my hope that most spouses who actually love the person they're with and want to have health and good things for them, for themselves, and for their relationship would be open to a discussion around changing their relationship with alcohol. Like if I would have told you that I didn't want to drink anymore, and you would have said, that's fine, but I'm going to keep drinking just as much as I normally do, and it's going to be just as readily available in our house as it always has been, I think that would have been not very compassionate of you. And that's the same with like any life decision or health decision that someone realizes that they think they should pursue. If you're with the right person, hopefully they would be able to support that, whether that means that they support you and so they no longer buy alcohol to have at home, or maybe we move any alcohol into the garage fridge instead of having it in the immediate fridge. Just making decisions. It's the same as if one of us said, I'm going to lose 50 pounds and I need you to help me be successful in that. Like, we would have these conversations. I know that's hard because it is so different maybe, but at the same time, like, if you are in a relationship with somebody and they can't support this idea, I think that would be more of a, we need to look at our relationship with alcohol even more than, like why do you have this knee-jerk reaction of alcohol being so important to be a part of your life experience? Is there something that you need to examine for yourself? And again, I'm not anti-drinking for others, but I am very pro consider the benefits of not drinking and support and celebrate the people you live your life with. I think it's all about like making a safe space for the person you love. I don't know.
Well said.
Thanks.
That is well said.
I'm very lucky though that it was just that easy.
We're both,
sure.
we're both that way, but we do, like you said, we want to support each other. So I don't know, this is more of a marriage counseling conversation, I guess, than it is a sober one or a sobriety.
Well, but I
don't like motorcycles really. I like them more now. I like them more now, but I'm not really into motorcycles, but Jason loves motorcycles. So I will sit on the back of his motorcycle and we will go have adventures. Like, that's another example of this same concept in my mind.
I wasn't really that into alpacas.
Yeah. You didn't want to have a small farm with alpacas, goats, and a wiener dog.
Now. Yeah.
But you do, and you love it. So I just think that it's an important thing to be able to talk about, especially if you are in a serious relationship. And if you can't talk about it, then like, gotta explore that more.
Yeah, I would say if anything from that question, I think the theme should be, don't be afraid to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be sober now. Like, so easy. I think about my grandpa, and his options were water, milk, coffee. Now we have every sparkling water you could ever think of. He had the option of really not great alcohol-free beers, whereas we have award-winning craft beers to choose from and craft mocktails and spirits. So it's just so easy to try it on.
I like how you phrase that. Try it on, right? And to the point of, maybe I'm just going to say, like, it's, we're talking in January, it's dry January. Okay. Everybody's like, okay, dry January. Then what happens on February 1st? And maybe, okay, you're going to have Jason's experience. I'm going to drink and realize, wow, I feel like crap. I think I don't want to do this again. Or maybe you're going to drink and be like, oh yeah, that was super fun. I really missed it. And you're going to go back to drinking. I think this conversation for me is just to open it up to people knowing that it is possible, even for people who live in an environment and exist in an environment that is literally based on alcohol, that if you want to remove alcohol from your life, you can. It might be hard. It might be easy. I don't know what your particular circumstances are. I will say, if it is really difficult to eliminate something that is so toxic and really doesn't make you feel good, there's probably more to it. It's not that you just like to drink. You are probably turning to that because you don't like something else. And that would be a sign of, to Emma's point, sit in the discomfort and let's figure that out, because the alcohol isn't making that something else go away, and it's not making that something else better. In fact, it's probably just making a whole bunch of other things worse. So Absolutely. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts that either one of you want to share with the listeners?
Something about what you were just saying was making me think about one little element that I don't think really gets talked about. Is it almost felt empowering a little bit to take control of that. And now that's like a satisfying feeling to be able to just not have it be a part of it. So maybe the dry January thing, that's one thing that can come out of it. Like maybe you might think, oh, this feels good to be able to take control over this. And then if that lingers, then that's a positive. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's so much of our life that I believe that we would not have accomplished if we were still drinking. And I think it's because of the amount of resources and mind power and clarity and, again, opportunity, because you remain present, that you can pursue, that we were unknowingly trading for drinking beer and doing shots.
It was steering our life in simple ways. Like, what are we doing now? Well, what time does the bar open? Or what time does this? Or can we get there so that we can still get a Bloody Mary? Or, like, let's go to brunch so that we can drink.
But instead, we did things like this, which was when COVID hit, we bought a camper van and we traveled all over the US playing socially distanced outdoor shows. And I could not have driven 8 hours every day from one location to another location and been happy and healthy had I been drinking every single night like our previous lifestyle would have prescribed.
But not only the physical part of it, I don't think we would have imagined this life that we have created. No. We would have just been in the normal daily grind of it all. And we've really created something from that. So it's important that you said that.
I love it. What a true success story. It's beautiful. And I think, what you're speaking of really is an opportunity cost. Alcohol costs you a lot of things, and it costs you a lot of opportunities as well.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you can't see it when you're drinking.
Right.
Like you just, especially if you have a relationship like I describe of having diminishing returns, where it's more than just, when you have a bad relationship with alcohol, it's almost impossible to see that there is a wealth of benefits you could pursue, or that there are things that you're missing, because it's science. What's happening in your brain when you have a bad relationship with alcohol, you over consume on a regular basis, is because there's actual science occurring in your body that is making the alcohol say, great, let's have more. And that's not an indication of a good or a bad person or good or poor decision making. That's just an actual scientific experiment occurring in your brain and your bloodstream that until you unplug from that cycle, you don't get to have that clarity. But I will say, I feel like we made it all feel really good, because it has been really good. But I will say that for my first 14 days of sobriety, I never thought I should drink, but it was all consuming of like, I have made the decision to not drink. And that can be exhausting and overwhelming. And for some people, I think
even physically a little bit, it was hard.
You're going through withdrawal, even if it's not a super hard crash of a withdrawal, it's still withdrawal, again, with the science. And so I just want people to know that if they ever try not drinking, to not assess their new reality based off of the first 2 weeks while your body is finding a new normal. That wouldn't be fair to what not drinking actually has to offer. And I think that a lot of folks do get stuck in that, where it's so uncomfortable for 2 weeks, or 20 days is kind of the average number, while people's bodies find this new feeling of existence. And so that's an easy time to fall back into old habits that just feel safe because they're old habits. But if you can get past that time, then it's like, whoa, where have I been all my life?
And then you can get a dachshund.
Who's never known us to drink alcohol.
That's fantastic. It really speaks to my motto, hard now or harder later. You push through those hard 14, 20 days, or you don't, and then it will be harder later. So Emma and Jason, thank you so much. This has been great. I know there's somebody who's going to hear it who is going to say, you know what, I want to do this, and I can do it. So we'll put some information in the show notes for how people can learn more about maybe being sober curious, maybe some, tools and tips that are out there. Obviously, we'll connect with each of you in ways. So if people want to reach out or just follow your story, clearly listen to your music, I strongly suggest that. And I really appreciate y'all coming on and sharing this important message. So thank you. And listeners, now you know you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. We hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.